Good evening, everyone. I thought I'd set up a live today. I'll be monitoring each page it's been cross-posted to, Barry's, Abide of Spirit, and of course the main page. I do suggest the comments will be placed onto In-Spiritation though, so it's easier for me to respond if that will be the case. Today I want to give a short update on the group before I begin and discuss the matter I was inspired to discuss. First of all, yesterday in the trans Q&A, it ended up into a trans discussion, which was very inspiring to be a part of. And we are looking forward to finding a way to implement this into the future. Hopefully not too far away, but any feedback is welcome. Any suggestions on topics you would like to listen to while Spirit is speaking is also welcomed. We do have plans to discuss with mediums on live later on and further down the line. I've already messaged a medium in hopes that we can have a live discussion where they can talk of their experiences. So I hope you enjoy that. Now, just checking the comments. Hi, Abler. Just loaded the one there and Abide of Spirit. There we go. Yep. So today I'm going to just talk about where I first began through my spiritual experiences. How it started in the beginning for me is, I would say at 5 years old. I mean, as kids always do, you would always talk about things weirdly and like talk about the communications of spirits, such as witches and all that, like scaring yourself. But the very first spiritual memory I ever have is at 4 years old, actually, just coming on 5, when the long-term memory starts within the brain. And it's weird because both I and my twin sister had this exact same dream. And I was in the front of a car, which was the one outside. It was very vivid for both of us. And I was in the front and her and the brother was in the back. And we were driving and then I crashed. It was pretty much that simplistic. Now, I left that as a faint memory for quite some years. And at 17 years old, no, actually not 17, 19 years old, I talked to my sister and I said, do you remember this dream we ever had? And she said, yes. And I said, what color was the car? And then she gave the color, which coincidentally was a purplish, which is behind me on the background. There's no chance, isn't there, in things? So that was a very coincidental, scary thing because we didn't really talk about this dream only as young little kids. We're like little toddlers, you know, like talking weirdly, and we weren't as developed as what we are now. So for us to both have this dream as a young child and share it, but also to validate it later on, was a very eye-opening experience, which I will always take to my grave, because the fact that I tested it, like, am I remembering this right? Did I just have it and put it into my sister, or did she have it and put it into me? But no, we actually both shared the same dream. And that is a very interesting thing to have as an experience. I just want to say hi to you, Bev. Thank you for watching this live. I'm just keeping my eyes out on 3 different tabs. Usually Barry's talking away, but Barry's not going to be on this live. It's just going to be me. So after the experience there, we moved home and I started school. Now, with having been part of the autism spectrum disorder, I wasn't really someone that developed much friends. So this is the story of where everything began to me. And I want to say good evening to you, Carol. That's just popped up on the main screen. I was walking on the playground, and as I was walking, I used to wander a lot as a kid. So this is when I was in year 6 at 7 years old. And as I was strolling away on the playground, someone kicked a football and I held my hand up. And the moment this person tried to kick the football, they ended up hitting me in the hand because I was flinching as I was just crossing the gap between the white lines of the field. The moment I got hit, my hand got striked, and then I went to the one who was in charge of the playground things. But this is where, around a week, 2 weeks later, that's where my disease very first began, from that kick in the hand. And this is an autoimmune disease where it affects my immune system and swollen arteries, and you can have like blobs that piercing through his skin, so it's quite painful. But when this started to happen, of course, I was taken out of school. It was unknown, and I grew up in hospital a lot. I got schooled in hospital, which, to be honest, I kind of faked being asleep because I didn't want to be a part of being in pain and I have to do maths and there on the computer alone and make jellies and all that. So this is where the spirit world started to come forward towards me. And what they did is they came within the dreams, they came within me just about falling to sleep. And I would start to see shadow figures and energies all around me. And it was a very frightening experience. This kind of lasted very long through my childhood. And lucky you. Thank you, Apple. Yeah, it lasted very long in childhood. It was very scary because I would be taken out of my body, but I was able to see all of the room. So let's say we're not putting it in a location. You have your room. It's got all these walls around you, the back, the front, the right, the left. And all of a sudden, you're taken into this advanced sensitivity by spirit. And you're seeing things, but you can't explain that you're seeing it with your eyes because your body's paralyzed, your eyes are shut, but you're having these experiences where you're just above your body, but you're able to see all these walls around you. So I would actually use the word awareness. I was aware of everything what was in the room without using the two pupils in my eyes to simulate to the brain what I was seeing. And it was a very frightening experience, and I would very much block it out. So as I advanced forward, skipping just to 17, because there was a lot of those experiences there, what could be discussed at a later date. When I got to 17, that's when I started to talk to spirit a lot more. Well, I was talking to spirit around 13, but it was in the thought waves, but they came a lot stronger at 17. And I would have experiences of wind all around me, and without the windows being open, the blinds would be flapping against the window, all these type of things going on around me. I would hear the whispers. Now, when the spirits whispered to me, it was very frightening as well. They wouldn't speak in actual words. They were actually speaking in tones of whispers. The whispers could go silent and then it could go loud, but then there was a pace to the whispers, like it was some sort of lyrics to a song, as there was communicating to me in these energies. So I was not probably opened up enough to understand why spirit was speaking in these whispers towards me. And when I got to 17 and I started to talk to the spirits, the adults decided to get involved with that, and that almost costed me into being placed into a place I didn't want to be a part of. So for many years, I actually shut myself off from spirit, and I just progressed on with life as normal. It was 13 years without my illness until after I came back abroad, because I was living abroad in Sweden. On when my disease returned, I felt the aching in my hand, but there was no blobs. But I knew to myself it was coming back. So it kind of put me into a state of, oh, so this can come back randomly in my life, whenever, wherever. And that was a bit of a shock for me, because then I was placed on a lot of things that gave me like psychosis and zombified me and kind of took my will away. And what happened, right? Well, I'm afraid all the development I had with spirit from 7 all the way up till then, so this is 2018, I lost it all because I was so zombified by the medication. I just couldn't hear spirit anymore. And that moment I realized, because I could not hear spirit anymore, I felt so alone. I felt so trapped. I always was doubting, is this my own thoughts or is this spirit? The moment I realized I couldn't connect, then I realized it was spirit. So this went on. I was zombified. Once the prednisolone was cutting down to suppress the inflammation of my ailment, this is when spirit kind of came back to me. As soon as I was recovering, they kind of jumped onto me, and my great nana was called Catherine, and the spiritualist church in Doncaster is actually Catherine Street. So I ended up seeking a spiritualist church. So I went on my journey, and then I went to the spiritualist church. I just want to say hi, Eileen. Hope you're okay. And so when I went to the spiritualist church, this was like March 27th. I think it was 2019. So 2018, I was mostly zombified, I'm afraid. And when it was in 2019, I met this lovely medium, and she was called Sally. You can't find her anywhere on Facebook, Google, absolutely anywhere. So I sat uncomfortably, sat into the spiritualist church, which I had no clue about. And all of a sudden, Sally comes towards me. And when she comes to me, she instantly links in. She knows about what I'm doing in life. She knows about the fire alarm going off just before I go to the church. She knows all these things about me wanting to go to Scotland to visit. And then what she did, and this is a very rare thing, so I won't say it on a live. I am a young person. I only know very limited people in spirit. She literally stood there, this medium, and she gave every single name of my loved one in spirit at that moment around me that I was aware of. Now, this was my very first message in the spiritualist church. And I felt so honored and privileged to finally get that validation, you know, how lucky I was, because I've gave the test to other people. I would even say into the comments, try and give just 5 names like she did. And you may not even be able to just get one of those names right on what she said that day. And that's what was so beautiful. Good evening, Carol, and I absolutely sympathize with you on all of that. Thank you, Elaine, for your lovely comment. That means a lot. So after I got this experience where I was able to have that validation with spirit, I was shooting out, I was excited. I spent my life looking for truth. I'm very passionate. Who's the creator? Is there an infinite intelligence? What is this? Where's the truth? Where's the knowledge? That craving inside me, like a hunger that was never sated. And then all of a sudden you find spirit. Good evening, Patrick, brother. Thank you. And then you find this answer to spirit within you. And all you want to do as soon as you find that is just go ahead with it. And after meeting Sally, I would go to the church quite regularly, see all these mediums. To be honest, I never really get messages in churches. Very, very rare I would ever get a message. I always wondered why. So we're skipping a few months now. So from March 27th, that date, it ended up September 2019 when I met Mr. Barry Potter. Everyone always wonders, how did we meet? Where did we meet? How did this all come about? Well, what happened is he was in a trance service, and this is just the second best message I've ever got because of Sally. And spirit came to me. And when spirit came to me, this says, and I was going through a lot of doubt at this time. I was wondering from the church, am I going to be able to ever link with spirit? Am I anything in this world? I was feeling so much despair and anguish inside me because being an autistic person, you're always pushed out. You're always put into the corner. And I spent so many years in social isolation that I was very uncomfortable being outside of myself. So spirit comes to me in trance and they say, you think you don't have the gift, but let me tell you, you do have the gift. and they start to go into a deep worded way with me, and start to give a message. And me, I'm still a bit reserved at this moment because of not being socializing as much. So when this happens, Spirit said at the end, and believe me, they validated the wheelchair of my nana and everything. I didn't know this stuff till I contacted my grandma after the service and validated it all. But there's one thing what got me that day. Spirit said, will you please do us a favor? And I said, yes. And then they said, please tell Michael we love him. Tell him we love him. Now, this is 5 weeks after my grandfather passes, Michael, and that really shunned me. So what I did then, after the translink broke and they went to another person, I did a prayer. I said, your mother-in-law, because it was my nana who came forward, I says, she loves you. I said this other person with Asperger's, robotic, gave it. And at the very end of the service, Barry offered a Q&A just after Spirit left, and he rarely did it. So I raised my hand and I said, is my grandfather okay? And then Barry just went into detail about atoms and needle in the haystack type situation and all of this. But then at the ending of that, he just said, will you please do your prayers more compassionately? And that really shocked me. Like telepathy, it wasn't that Barry heard this through telepathy. It was that Spirit was making them aware that they heard my prayer in that service and I didn't do it correctly on the standards that should be. And this really started me getting interested furthermore into Spirit. And I started to follow Barry and try and meet him at different churches. And there was a bit of a gap. We had the COVID then come in. I mean, we're talking September 2019, a few months after that. We're getting in the March, I think, of the lockdown. And just then is when I went to try and see him in a meeting group because he was posting his experience every day, but I didn't get there in time because I was with my grandmother at that time. And bless her, because she did take a transition. I then joined a Zoom group called, well, he was with 2 ladies, and I got to meet Barry there, but unfortunately it was very quick. They wanted to teach me, they wanted to talk about me writing chakras, what they mean and everything through Google, and it was really damaging my spiritual progression. There was one word Spirit said to me before I even went to a spiritualist church: never let it change you for who you are now, because there's too much teaching going on, there's too much dogma and too much creeds, and it can really confuse people, I'm afraid. And so when they was doing that to me, I was telling them about my experience of seeing these shadows and that. The next morning, this group, which had Barry in, they pretty much said, we don't feel like it's safe to be around you because you're not working correctly with Spirit, and we think you should just go to the SNU because they'll be the ones that can help you. So they pretty much were saying I'm working with dark energies. And you get a lot of these egotistical people in the movement that will judge your energies, judge your vibration because they're so high up there and you're so low. It's common. You see these people, so I wouldn't even take it personal. Anyway, after being kicked out of the group, I started to seek out more. And this ended up with me messaging Barry around a month later and starting my own group to try and globalize the truth of Spirit, to expand the knowledge towards America and other countries. And it was going so well. We have so much lovely chats. How do we pray properly? I'll give you words for that, Elaine. A prayer that wants is one that grieves. A prayer from the heart No. What did Spirit say to me in the hospital? A prayer from the mind is one that greeds. A prayer from the heart is one that needs. So what I would say, if with your question, if you're going to pray properly and you want the potency of energy to be reached to Spirit, you pray from your heart, through your love, through your compassion, through your soul, through your expression. You don't just think through prayer and just be like, you sat on Santa Claus knee basically and say, so I want this for Christmas, I want that and this and that, because there's no vibration, there's no potency and energy through that prayer. But when you're praying from the heart, it shows you reflecting, it shows there's potency and the spirits of the realm, it's reaching them, and they get to use this energy to send it out even to the world, even if it's in a form of healing. So I would say it in that sense. But after after the group started to continue, Barry would talk about his experiences of doing a trans Q&A in like the 1990s, 1980s, something like that. And just one day it just snapped. And I just said, Barry, do you think we could ever do a trans Q&A? And he just says, I have no idea. Magically, the Spirit came forward in this group one day and they just said, you have questions and you want to ask questions of Spirit. And that's how the trans Q&A began. They put those inspirations into my mind and it began there. And all of a sudden now, yesterday, with the low members of the group, I was like, well, where's it going to go now? And as soon as I was in a relaxed state, instant, simultaneous, spontaneous idea, make a trans discussion. So I will say this, actually, because I've skipped ahead a lot of my story. There's a lot that's missing, but the point is, we all have a background. We all have a very fabric of expression to where we are now. And we've all got to try and show more respect for each other, to be honest. And I want to give the opportunity to people to be able to speak to Spirit in the group through trance with Barry. I want people to be able to just, even if they disagree with something, even if they want to talk about the aliens or all these different chakras and that, and reincarnation, just if that's where your interests are, then that's where your interests are. But if you want to ask Spirit in the group about it, you can't go away from it if you don't get the answers you want. You can't say it wasn't explained to you when they give you what they know. Because that's always been given from our group from the very beginning. And there's a lot of groups that don't do that. And we are planning on doing a discussion group. And I would love for everyone in the community who's watching this live, just to implement suggestions, you know. It's like any suggestion is perfect because we want to be able to express where people's feeling confusion or they want to know more on the subject. And having a Spirit work through an instrument is the most noblest thing to have, because you don't get much private circles these days where you have seances like the days of old and you're hearing Spirit and there's the floating trumpets and transfiguration and all this beauty. It's all been just misinterpreted now. It's all been materialized. Materialism really has grown thick into the veins of this movement. And there's a lot of people that are craving within themselves of answers and truth. And it can't always come from one person because it's been 2,000 years old, even longer than that, with sayings such as this. The kingdom of heaven is within, but there's even been further sayings before that. That's always expressed this simple truth, that you can find all the answers within yourself, but there's so much external looking at the moment. You're all like, let's say with readings and messages or angel numbers, numerology, horoscopes, zodiac signs, Chinese zodiac signs, people are in this state of emotional turmoil because they're so craving to find something. But if they just found it within themselves, they will just feel that individual peace. And that's what we want to share to everyone on the earth. It's not about having mediators of Spirit. It's about the world realizing you don't need mediators for Spirit. You can find the connection of your spirituality within yourself. And that's what's really much encouraged. I'm new to watching. Can you please send me a link to your group? Would love to join if possible. I have to go now, but yes, that's absolutely fine, sweet. If you send me a message, I will send you a link if you ever wish to speak towards spirit. That's perfectly fine. But what you need to understand as well is stuff like transmediumship. There's many people in this movement now that say, I can do trans, but I choose not to do trans. So if spirits worked on you since the day you've been born or before you were born, when they chose you to be an instrument, they've expanded your lungs, they've controlled the blood flow, the neurotransmitters, every facet of detail in your physical body. They take you into trance the very first time. They give the wisdom to people, and then that person turns around and says, nah, I want to just do mental mediumship. I don't want to do trance. It's not for me. That raises concern for me, because if it was true trance, statistically, I don't think a person would run away from that. Secondly, I think it's an insult to spirit's intelligence, because we are just a portion. We're just a reflection to what the spiritual realms are. And if people's going to sit there and say, oh, I can do this, but I don't want to, it raises eyebrows of doubts with me. I don't think they're being true. I think that they're probably overshadowed. They were inspired to overshadow. And I don't feel like they was taken into the fullness of trance, because I take it as a very serious phenomenon when transmediumship happens. And a lot of people out there are instruments to spirit. They wish to use. Yes, sometimes spirit can work for years upon a vessel and it can go to waste. But I just don't see it being the situation of, I don't want to do it. I just want to do mental mediumship. It's like, this is where it goes wrong, my friends. Why is it so much about teaching and titles and labels? I want everyone to go back into the old, to find the answers, to bring the new forward, rather than skipping because you feel like you're on a high vibration and you criticize people in pain and all of this. Why don't you take a look at the old? Because if you knew what the old was like, you wouldn't be criticizing it. You can skip ahead and be lazy, expect everything to be given to you on a silver platter, or you can seek the knowledge, study the knowledge, look at the history, look and analyze everything, and not expect a magical wand to wave and say, I'm going to be transfiguration, I'm physical, I'm a trance medium, I'm this, I'm that, I've got these titles, I've studied at this college, I've been on a spiritual retreat, I've done a course, I've paid for this course, I've got a certificate. All of that, do you really think it matters when you go to the spirit world? Do you really think any of those things, those aspects are going to matter? I'm not going to say anything other than ask. Ask yourself, ask your motive, ask your intentions, ask what you feel and express yourself, because you're all entitled to your free will and your opinion, but I'm also allowed to express mine. And that's the way I've always been nurtured within myself, through my dreams and through my expression and my conditions. Remember, when spirit wants to work with someone, it's not always about having the same path as one other person. You see, we're all individual people and we all have certain conditions, and we all have different guides, different helpers that bring about our evolutionary state. So what works for one person is not always going to work the same way for another person. And we all need to be empathetic about that, because it's not going to be the same. So this is where the teaching goes wrong, because people think that everyone's going to be the same. And when people try to be the same, the expectations become the same and the falseness begins. And that falseness is taking over a lot of spiritualism. You've got too much people trying to control spirituality now, saying who's a good medium, who's not a good medium, who you should book, who you shouldn't book, who's the best medium of the year, let's put him in a magazine, let's do this, let's put a video on this. Is that spirituality or is that materialism? This is just me and my observance of the detail where I've been able to collect over my journey through spirit. I may not be long experienced, I know I'm a novice. I know I'm a fledgling, as others would say. I'm humble enough to be that. I'm not trans medium. I'm not actually a full medium. There is so many years I have to do to gradually progress to where I'll come. But I promise you this, in the future, I do believe I will be serving spirit into the fullness, but that doesn't happen quickly. That happens short and very gradually. And this is where I wish for everyone to hear these words and express it within themselves. If you have that desire to serve spirit, you will have those in spirit that also desire to serve attached to you. If you desire for monetary gain, self-motivation, gratification, and that motive is measured there, how many helpers in the spirit world are going to attach you compared to those mediums out there in the billions of people that live on this world to work with them? That may hurt you. That may hurt the egos. But I'm just saying, spirit's going to choose the best instruments forward. They want people that have got the desire to serve, the humility, the sincerity, the honesty, the directness, even to not fall back on the words, but be true to themselves and express themselves. There's so many tests each and everyone's going to get from just trying to work with spirit. So, yeah, I know I'm serving spirit now, but I'm not forcing myself to serve in a way that I'm not prepared to serve. Not prepared, but I'm not ready. And I wish I could link further with connecting to people's loved ones in spirit, but I just know that the mutuality of me and my main guide, Rahul, we're progressing with each other, and someday those true messages will come out to people. And I want to make sure that people get the best evidence of spirit the same way I did when I first started the churches, when I entered the movement. And that's what it's really all about. It's about that evidence, you know, it's not about rushing. And I will just urge each and every one, if you don't like what our trans Q&A say, or what we've wrote on the philosophies through scribing from spirit, and believe me, we have to review the videos and everything, then listen to Silver Birch in the book, because he's just going to say similar things, just in different wordings to what's been said through Barry in trans. So I want everyone to ask themselves this. If we're so false, then why does it match up to something we've only recently found? You can't replace what's true, you know? The truth's always going to stay the same. The knowledge and wisdom's just going to change within yourself. There's some very simple truths with spirit, and you guys really can progress. You really can. It's just that you've got to put that total trust into spirit, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen from paying for a course. It's not going to happen from going to like Arthur Findlay College, anything like that. I'm sorry to even say that college, but from the people I've met from there, they've been quite materialistic with their way of speaking. Like, you need to do this, you need to do that, write this homework, do this homework. That's not what spirituality is, my friends. Spirituality is expressing yourself and finding that love. There's such infinite evolution within ourselves. You all may think I'm too young to speak on this stuff, but you don't understand what it's like to go so many years and be socially isolated and trapped out of the world. The only answers I got was from myself within. I didn't go into the materialistic world because it's always shunned me away from it, for being that difference, for being neurodiverse rather than neurotypical. And yes, that is a title or label, but it is also an expression to my psychological and mental state of mind from who I was born at birth. There's a lot of ignorance in this world, and, you know, it's not about people, when someone from the autistic standpoint wants to speak about themselves, all you hear these days is, I have a grandson with autism, I have a son with autism, I have a friend with autism. How many people with autism get to speak for themselves, their own experiences, without people just jumping in and saying, oh, I know someone with that, I hear someone with that. So I will also ask people to start to value other people and their experiences, start to create a bit of empathy, you know, and look into the hearts of other people before jumping to conclusions. Yeah, never too young. I know, Sonia, but of course, it takes a lifetime to learn a lot with spirit. And though I have gained a lot of knowledge, and I'm blessed to gain this knowledge, I don't see myself to have any authority or influence. All I know is through my conditions and state in life, through growing up and everything, it's led me to lose out on the material knowledge and gain more spiritual knowledge. And I'm very weak in the sense of materialism and mingling in and everything, and what to say, what's right, what's offensive. So you can always see that our Father God, he compensates. Those things that you think you lose, you actually gain, because it's part of a perfect law and an operation. So I will say this, what I have, I just wish to share to everyone else. And that's all I wish to do. That's my stance. And if you ever want to come into the group, you're completely welcome to do so. And I thank everyone on the video that's commented and supported in watching this live on my experience. It does take a lot of nerves to do this, and I'm having to monitor like 4 different tabs. But I urge people just to find that courage within themselves to find their desire to serve spirit, but also not just that, seek. Try and attune to this law, which we call either God, infinite intelligence, great white spirit. Whatever you find in that intention or motive, doesn't matter on the words of it, it just matters on the thought of it. And perhaps you'll find when you attune to this perfect divine law, you'll find the spirituality within yourself start to release, in the sense of what this great law has gave is the breath of life within each and every one of us. We're a part of this whole creation, a small aspect, a small sacrifice of this great force that has placed this gift into us, what we can attune to, what we're so gifted to be able to recognize. So I'll leave it on that sense, and I say thank you everyone for watching the video, and I'll say God bless, and all of you take care.